Got it.
Okay, well, first of all, thank you for taking the time to talk to me. I really enjoyed the film.
Awesome. Thanks. Yeah. Thanks for watching it. I'm glad. And yeah, I'm really glad you enjoyed it. I'm glad people are seeing it. It's just great to have something out in the world. It's always a pleasurable part of the process.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, how did you come onto this project?
It was a bit of a roundabout way, but essentially it was through a recommendation from another DP that I had just worked with earlier last year, named Igor Martinovic, and I shot a Snapchat series that Igor directed, and Igor had also in the past worked with our producer Ari Isler as a camera operator. So Ari is a professional career camera operator, and he's worked on everything like major shows, Ozark and The Outsider, which is he worked on with Igor. So they have a relationship and a rapport, and Ari also produced this film. So Igor, I think, had recommended me, and I had worked with Ari many years prior when I was still in film school, interning on some shoots with Reed Morano as a cinematographer, and Ari was camera operating for her. So yeah, it's one of those kind of New York film, random connection kind of things that all kind of culminated in this opportunity to shoot this film.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, it's definitely kind of who you know. Some of it's a little bit of serendipitous luck, I think.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think it's sort of a little bit of both. Like the who you know is kind of intrinsically connected to the serendipitous aspect of it, because it's sort of like you never know who you're going to meet or where you're going to meet them or when you're going to, and I think it's always worth just being open to those things, because you truly never know. Some PA or second assistant director or props person on one movie could end up being getting a directing opportunity and hit you up, and you just never know when things will happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, this is Brian Snyder's second feature film. What was he like to work with?
Yeah, Ben was great. He's comes from a writing background, so first and foremost, I think Ben was very focused on character, performance, working with the actors, making sure that the film worked from a storytelling standpoint, and paid really close attention to detail in those kind of departments. And then myself and Ben were able to really work on crafting the visual look of the film, but all coming from that origin point of story, character, performance. And we really built a visual style that centered around and elevated those elements specifically, because it's such a specific story. It's so character driven. It's very dialogue driven. I think our big goal was how do we utilize the visual language and the cinematography in the best way possible to emphasize these story beats, emphasize the themes that we wanted to talk about, and showcase the actors and showcase their performances and the dialogue, and really give them all moments to shine without taking away from it, but also without neglecting the look of the film, and without we still wanted to imbue it with beauty and with purpose. And so yeah, in prep we really worked hard on shot listing and looking at reference images and pulling together the visual style of the film in order to accomplish those goals specifically.
Yeah, and that's really interesting because The film looks great. As you say, it's certainly a more character-driven story. So, is that maybe more challenging when it's like a drama versus maybe like say like a horror film that is maybe a little bit more visually like um engrossing, I guess.
It definitely is, and it was also definitely something that intimidated me a little bit at first, but I I like to follow a piece of advice that a cinematographer gave me once, not me personally, but that a cinematographer has extolled in public once, that really spoke to me, which is that if uh, if you're not a little bit afraid of whatever project you're taking on, then it's not worth taking on. Like, that fear of the unknown is a big motivator on which projects to tackle next, and that comfort and safety uh, can be easy, but not as rewarding as stepping out of your comfort zone a little bit. So in the narrative world, I've definitely mostly done films that I guess would be considered more genre or more stylized films. And so tackling a dramedy like this was something I hadn't really done before, and that was what both scared and excited me to take on the project. Because in more stylized cinema, or I guess in genre cinema, you have an excuse to be more stylized. The story that you're telling is inherently elevated a little bit. There's a level of suspension of disbelief to, certain genre stories that allows you to then also suspend disbelief with the visual style of the film, and you can motivate more extreme camera movement, more dramatic lighting, all of these kind of more stylized cinematic flourishes that end up elevating the experience of watching a genre film. But with a dramedy, it's really the opposite of that. It's anything that's too stylized or too flourished can take attention away from what should be the core focus of the piece, which is character, story, theme. And but then we also didn't want it to look drab or uninteresting, and we didn't want to neglect using the visual medium to tell the story. So it's tough. Yeah, it's tough to find that balance, but it's a fun challenge to find it. It's sort of like, how can we create beauty? How does it fit in to what we're making? How do we use film language, but in a subtle way, to tell the story, to imbue scenes with meaning, and to explore theme. So yeah, it's definitely a challenge, but it was really rewarding and really fun to tackle it on this one.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that it is very subtle, and I think when it comes to something that maybe, as you say, isn't as stylized, I got so caught up in the characters and the moment of the story that you almost kind of forget about maybe the visuals of it, but that is by no means like a bad thing. I mean, like I said, it certainly is not drab
Yeah,
looking, and
no,
um,
and it's interesting that you say that, because that's really the end goal. I mean, I'm so happy to hear it, because that's really the goal of the cinematographic approach for a film like this, is that you don't want it to be noticeable, you don't want it to stand out, but you do want it to imbue the film and with scenes with meaning and subtext, and you want it to really focus and sharpen theme and mood and all of these things, but in a subconscious way, so that an audience isn't consciously thinking about how the film and the visual language and the cinematography are affecting their experience of the story, but they are affected. So that's the ultimate goal of this kind of thing. So yeah, hopefully we managed to strike that balance. I think we did. I'm I'm happy with how it turned out. So
Yeah, I
we
certainly
managed.
think you nailed it.
Good. Okay, good. Thank
Yeah.
you.
So wrapping up, now you shot this on digital, correct?
We did, yes.
No, it's interesting because I read in, I believe it was Pushing Pixels, that you actually prefer the digital medium. Is that right?
I do.
Um,
Yes. The rumors are true.
which that, I mean, I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, especially how I think, and you might agree with this as far as like, you can get a film looking picture from digital, like a film quality kind of look.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we were look, to me, my preference, first off, I should also add the caveat that my preference is personal, and it is by no means a decree on that whether or not I think one medium is objectively superior to another. This is purely my personal experience with it. The reason I personally prefer digital is uh, is purely logistical. It's just the ability to view an image on set on a high definition monitor that is one-to-one what is being recorded in the camera allows me as a cinematographer to be more bold with lighting and allows me to be more precise with camera placement, movement, positioning, and all these other elements, and allows me to have flexibility in post to decide how much of a certain quality or a certain amount of patina we want to imbue the image with. So on this film, we worked with Nick LaRoe at Nice Shoes, who's an incredible colorist, and we in pre-production had identified certain elements in some of the reference images that we were looking at from films that were our references that were shot on digital, but had a filmic look and a sort of timeless quality to them because of that look. We particularly were focused on Sam Levy's work. In particular, he did a couple of films with Noah Baumbach that were set in New York that also inspired us specifically on this film. And also Lady Bird, which was not necessarily a visual reference only because its setting was so different from what we were going for, but was certainly a reference for our color grade and our palette in general, and our approach to adding film grain in post-production during the color grading process to imbue the image with a more kind of timeless quality. And that's exactly what we ended up doing. And I'm really happy with the results. I think you're able to get the same feeling that the specific patina of 35 millimeter film or 16 millimeter film or whatever look you're after can give an audience, and you're able to achieve those same technical elements digitally nowadays and elicit the same response in an audience. There are differences, but a general audience is not discerning enough to notice them, and ultimately that's what matters in the end, is the audience experience. So yeah, that's the long answer to that.
No, that's great. That makes a lot of sense, and I think that's really like a really interesting viewpoint, because again, like somebody like me that is not really in the know with cinematography, I think that actually makes a lot of sense. And as you say, you get the same results, and it just makes your life a little easier, but at the same time, as you say, you can take some more risks.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I find that it ends up fostering more creativity for me personally. And I think a lot of times it's easy to get lost in the technical and forget that we're making films for an audience that is not as well versed in the technical as we are. I think that, I mean, for me personally, I just don't like getting lost down that rabbit hole, because it ends up just taking away time and attention from my larger goal with any film, which is to create an experience for an audience and tell a story in a way that resonates, and use filmic language, whether it's camera movement, shot placement, lighting, or color grading and film grain and all these other elements, in order to elicit a certain mood or a certain experience within an audience that is not going to be able to point to what specific technical elements are making them feel a certain way, right? And I think we're just in a place now with technology where there's just so many options, and it's great, and I love that. Whether you're doing digital film grain, or whether you're digitally superimposing a scan of film grain from actual exposed celluloid, or whether you are doing this process that a few cinematographers have been doing lately, which I really love, which I've experimented with, but we didn't do on this project, which is printing your digital file, your end result, your final grade, printing it to film, and then rescanning it back, which also imbues the image with filmic patina, but in a way that adds a little bit more randomness to it than you would get with a live grade, with a digital grain plate. And Greg Fraser has been using this method recently on Dune and on the Batman, and I think it's really great. I mean, I think we're at a place where we just have this perfect amalgamation of both analog and digital, and you get the best of both worlds without feeling the need to, take sides in some, silly turf war. That makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that probably wraps it up. Also, again, the movie is excellent. Allswell, I highly recommend it for y'all listening to this. And thank you again for taking the time to talk about your creative process. I think it's so interesting to me.
Cool. Yeah, no, it's my pleasure, Mike. I'm always happy to talk about it. I think it's a really interesting process. But I'm certainly biased in thinking that. So yeah, hopefully it's interesting to others, and I'm really glad and appreciative of the opportunity to talk about it. So thanks again.
Yeah, absolutely.